Up here in Sundown Bay, it's one of my favorite areas to fish. This whole back shoreline off the ICW edge, all the way up and down these areas. We've had lots of good production up in here. We've had some big sweeping tides this past few days. We've had some negative tides. We've had positive tides. So Sundown's one of those areas that you can really get into, whether it's super low tide or it's a really high tide or a normal tide. You can get in here and work all these. You got lots of different options in here. You've got grass, you've got mud, you've got clump shell on different parts of it. You got back lake mouths that dump out into it. So, if you've got the super low tides, you can get out there closer to the ICW, to that edge out there, and work your baits out there. But the one thing you always got to be aware of is when you're working that is the barge traffic that comes through there, because it pushes and pulls a lot of water off of that flat there. So just make sure that your boat's anchored really well, and make sure that you're not too close to it there, so it can maybe act like an undertow and pull yourself out there into that deeper water as well. So just want to always be aware of that when you've got a tug that's coming through there. But anyway, we've continued to work these back shorelines. We work behind the little island that's right here, work on all that there. We've located redfish, we've located trout, some scattered black drum here and there, pulled out a flounder or two. So it's been a nice little productive little spot, like I say, for lots of different things. Like, so we've had all kinds of different weather patterns this past few days, so everything is kind of aligned, so it works out well for us. And as far as our baits and stuff that we've been using, as far as the down south, back when we had our full moon and our transition days, we were really using lots of the burner shads, and it was really working out for us in multiple different flavors. Firecracker, mud minnow, twisted tea, big papa, was some of the staple. White ice and bone diamond have all been good colors to use. Same in the original size, the same flavors. As far as the knock and tail colors, Rogue has been very good for us. Greenbacks, heavy metal has also been pretty good for us and worked those types of areas. When we were out there working the edges in a little bit deeper water, Soft Dine XLs have been good. We get that slow sinking bait that's off that. If you're a corky person, you can throw the corkies that are off that, but the Soft Dine and Soft Dine XLs have been very good for us. Mirror lures, the Little Johns and Provokers have all worked pretty well. There's been just a bunch of different baits that's been productive. So we've had a lot of different things in our boxes to throw. Double D has been good. And of course, the one I mentioned a week or two ago is the Lele. So it's really it's a lot as far as how it works is like the Double D. So it's an ascension bait. So you pull it down and it pops back up to the top of the water, but you can really keep that thing worked down into the right column of water to locate and find these fish. Now, if we've had a lot of empty water as far as or shallower water, should I say, the edges out there have been the places that we've really wanted to get to, and that's just throwing out either throwing the corky or the soft dines and our plastics off of these edges and bouncing to see if we can't locate these fish that are hanging off some of those edges, because we've had some water temps that's been in the low 50s to the upper 6 or to the low 60s, so it's kind of there's been that fluctuation of about 8 to 9 degrees up in some of these particular areas. Great thing about this, you've got all the structure that you need: mud, grass, clump shell, water flow. You got plenty of tidal movement that's punting up in here, so it's given us plenty of opportunity to find and locate some fish. We've primarily been working the majors and minors, been very productive for us in any of the areas that we've been working, so always make sure that you include that in there. But the other thing too is make sure that you're patient with some of these areas. Sometimes they're not going to just light up straight away. Like I say, with early morning bites have been somewhat slow, and then as that sun begins to rise and that water temps begin to warm up, the fish become a little bit more active, and we've had more opportunities. So always keep that in the back of your brain there when you're working these particular areas like this time of year. We're going to have different weather patterns that's going to be popping up also on the next week or so, a few days anyway. So make sure you have that in consideration, and just make sure you're prepared for all different kinds of scenarios that are out there, because these areas up here can get nasty if you're not prepared for them. Up here in Dunham Bay, all this area back here, this back little bay system here that dumps right here off the ICW. You got good mud on this side over here. Now, I will have to tell you this. If you're going to jump off your boat on this particular side of the shoreline, get ready to sink. because you're going to go deep into the mud. If you can deal with that and you want to handle that, then so be it. Knock yourself out. But it's going to be knee to thigh deep in some areas back in there, and you trudge. So, but if you got a trolling motor on your boat, or you want to anchor up and kind of throw some bait up into this area, throw your plastics or maybe some Marker 54 jerk shrimp underneath the popping cork and work that, or maybe drift down it, you can do that as well. That does just fine there, so you've got some opportunity on it. Back here on this outside little edge here, you've got a couple of shell pads that are there right off the ICW. Again, because we had these big moving tides these last few days where we've had some negative tides and positive tides, so some of these areas in here have lit up pretty good. But again, it's real squishy mud, so you got to make sure that you're ready to contend with that if you're going to get out and wade it. Now, when you get back here in some of the little back lake mouths, that's a little bit easier to deal with. It's still pretty squishy until you get on this back shoreline here against the Aransas Wildlife Refuge. This whole shoreline here is okay to wade. It's just mid-foot, maybe ankle deep in some spots, and it's not bad at all. So you can wade this whole shoreline all up and down here. You've got grass that's mixed in there. You've got shell that's in there. You've got the right amount of mud in some of these spots. So when we've had these fronts and stuff come through here, and the wind's coming out of the west, northwest, northeast, this all sets up pretty well for you. So it's somewhat protected. But we've located some fish up in here, primarily redfish, scattered trout here and there, and that's been pretty much the main things that we've found in and around these particular areas. Now, there's not a lot of deep water other than the ICW there, so it's a little bit more difficult when you got the water that's gone out of that, so it makes it a little bit more tough to fish. So you have to be, you can pretty much sight cast some stuff in there. When we had our lower wind times and stuff have kind of settled down a little bit, so that water really cleaned up. But most part, when the water was up, you can get back in here and just, like I say, wade this thing, be patient with it, and you can locate and find you some redfish that are pushed up there on that, going up and down that shoreline around the little islands with the shell and stuff. There's been a few fish that have been hanging around that. Main baits we've been working through here, though, have been working the bait that I was talking about earlier, the lele. The lele's been a really good bait for us here the last couple of weeks. That bait, really, like I say, it works just like the Double D. It's just a smaller profile, a little bit more erratic, so you're getting really good reactionary strikes with it. Again, the down south, we've thrown a little bit more of the originals and the burner shad size in that, in the same flavors I mentioned in the last video there. Just continue to go with those particular things. 16th ounce jig heads. Make sure you're throwing a 16th ounce. Anything more than that, you're going to constantly get hung up in your grass. The bait's not going to work properly for you, so you want to make sure that you've got that light enough jig head in there to make that thing glide through the water columns. The soft dines and soft dine XLs, mirror lure Little Johns have been good. Primarily up in this area here, working the same thing, working this corner all the way back down into the little cove area back here in Dunham. So you just want to make sure you take your time. Don't force this. Don't get in too big a hurry. There's fish that are in there. And once they're ready to eat, like I say, early mornings have been a little bit slower, so we've been finding a little bit deeper water to fish in and around. So that's been a primarily tactical thing that we wanted to be able to do, fish in that 4 to 5 foot of water and get back in some of that. And then as that sun begins to rise and it starts warming that water up and heating the mud and stuff up, those fish start to come up out of that deeper water to feed. And so you have a few more opportunities. So plan accordingly, especially in these particular areas, or back in over in Sundown, like the last video. Either one of those are very similar as far as how they set up. So it really does well for you. So it's worth some time and effort to spend up there. So if you're in that particular area, and you get another good little area for you to hit. So again, patience, hit your majors and minors, have an assortment of baits, different profile and sizes. We're in the new moon, so your opportunity should be pretty good. When the fish are starting to really get into that bite frame, you should have some great opportunity. Back here in St. Charles Bay against the far shoreline, all the way across, from the boat ramp there, then all the way up here to Egg Point, East Pocket, all that area back up that way, Boy Scout Camp, Big and Little Sharp, Cowchip, Cavasso, all the way to the very back of St. Charles. Very, very back of St. Charles, at far shoreline, northern shoreline, northeast shoreline, going back toward the little back lake mouths back there. has been pretty good. There's been some redfish that's been hanging back in there, but that's mushy back in there as well. But that's what the kind of stuff that you're looking for this time of year is you want to be over that. So just make sure if you're going to fish that particular area, just give it a kind of a test run to make sure that you can deal with it, because it can get kind of difficult if you don't want to contend with that kind of mud that's back in there. So keep that in mind when you work very, very far back. Cavasso Creek's been very good for us. We've picked up redfish out of there, some scattered trout as well. Even a scattered flounder here or there on that in the west shoreline, providing that the wind sets up for you for that particular area. Again, still having to contend with duck hunters in some of these areas. Big and Little Sharp have been okay. There's been a few fish that's been up on that flat, and then, of course, over on Boy Scout Camp, you got a couple of different shorelines there that you can work, just depending on the type of wind that you got. And then you got Little Devil Bayou that's back in there. That gets pretty squishy back in that area too, so I would suggest you stay in your boat and kind of just work your trolling motor and back in up at Little Creek or back in the little lagoon area and the shorelines, because that can get tough. All the way back over here, come back around to Cow Chip and this back shoreline. All this area here has been pretty good for us. We've caught fish on it, not great fish, but it's been consistent. We've caught several in the lower slot trout size at 15 to 17 have been pretty good on just about any of those locations. Redfish have been the same. They've been up in the lower slot. The 20 to 22s have been in there, maybe sprinkled in a 24 or 25 every so often. But there's been fish that's been in there. So you have plenty of opportunity to work some of these areas and find you and locate you some fish, depending on what your wind's doing, depending on where your major and minor is taking place on that particular given day. Again, on the baits that we've been using, primarily back in here, we've been throwing the original size, as far like the watermelon red, bone diamond, white ice in the original size has been very good for us. There's another one, gold or Copperfield has been good, and El Guapo has been another color in the original size down south. If you have those flavors, those have done very well for us, again on a 16th ounce jig head. Knock and Tail has been primarily rogue flavor, and Greenback has done all right, and the white ice in that Knock and Tail has been pretty good. Again, same thing as far as the the Miradyne and the Miradyne XL, or Softdyne XL, should I say. And then, of course, the Lele we've not used it as much in here, but it's been good. The Double D has been good for us as well, to be able to work some of that, depending on what your water levels are, working it in and around that structure down in there, and to let that thing just kind of hover. If you know how the Double D works, there's lots of great locations back here that we've already talked about that the Double D and the Lele have come in handy for us. So again, just pick and choose what your baits are. If you got multiple people that are with you, 2, 3, 4, 5 people with you, everybody put on something a little bit different, profile, length, size, color, and just kind of go to work and see if what sticks, man. There's going to be something, there's going to be a pattern that develops for you. Pay attention to the little subtle things, because that's the biggest difference about constantly and consistently catching fish this time of year, is the subtleties that change throughout your fishing day. And if you don't catch those, then you can miss great opportunities to catch good fish and quality fish in multiples of fish. So make sure you just pay attention to what's happening, see that pattern develop, see what's going on with it. Again, majors and minors have been the main focus that we've been hitting. That's when we've been our most productive. We've scratched out fish in between there, but mostly the minors and majors have been the best thing that's happened for us. Again, weather patterns are going to be all over the place as we're moving forward into January. I hope your 24 has started out well for y'all. I hope you can continue to get out on the water and catch multiple days of fishing. But the biggest thing is make sure that you stay safe out there and have fun.